Well, we have a gas crisis on the East Coast that will persist for months. The Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, has warned that we are in for a bumpy ride, which could mean blackouts and power outages. So, in a resource-rich nation like Australia, how did we get here? Joining me live is the Grattan Institute's Energy Program Director, Tony Wood. Tony, thanks so much for your time. We are sick of talking to politicians who have spin on both sides of this argument, so please, the facts. How did we get to this point?
We had to try very hard for a long time. Look, it really is the consequence of several things which in a very tricky way have all come together at the same time. And for the benefit of the new Labor government, it's just at the right time for them to be able to be seen to be doing the right thing. And I think, look, largely, I think the government is doing the right thing. But we have a physical situation where a number of coal-fired power stations, on average about a quarter of them, over the last 4 or 5 months have been offline the entire time, on average. Now, all of them have their own particular circumstances. As the Minister's been saying, a couple of planned outages for maintenance this time of the year, but also for things that have gone wrong, like some flooding of coal mines, for heaven's sake, and a couple of even some serious damages to one plant in Queensland as a result of an explosion. So that means not enough coal-fired power available. We then call on gas-fired power to back up coal. Now, even when gas normally does that, because gas is more expensive than coal, that pushes prices up a bit. But normally you have enough. This is not a normal situation because it's been going on for so long. Most of the gas generators, they've not contracted to have that much gas available, which means they then have to go and get gas on what's called the spot market. And the producers of gas are saying, well, look, right now, we can sell gas for much, much higher price than that to the Europeans who are desperately short of our gas, for gas, because they're having a debate with the Russians, more than a debate, of course. So that creates a real tension. Now, I think the government at the moment and the market operator are doing everything they can under the existing rules of the market to ensure that we get through this. And I think the Minister's still right that we almost certainly will, but you'd never say never. On the other hand, it may also be that if things don't improve, they'll have to do something else. Okay,
so many voters at home looking at this saying we have so much gas to supply the whole country. They understand that you get a better price for it overseas, but why is there a shortfall on the East Coast like there's not one on the West?
Well, the West isn't facing the same combination of circumstances we have in Australia in terms of the coal-fired power station situation. So something that, not out of the blue, but building up over a period of months, then calls upon a major step increase in the availability of gas. Now, think about the way these big gas facilities work. They're not like a big bucket of gas just sitting there, which you can basically tip into. Whether it be Western Australia or the East Coast, most of the gas is already sold under contract and is being delivered both to domestic customers and to overseas customers, most of them in Asia, under those contracts. There's not a lot of physical flexibility that those facilities have because they're set up to provide gas to both markets. And to be fair, the coalition government did put in place a structure to try and make sure that we did have the gas available for that domestic market and at a price that was affordable. And most of the time that has worked, but it wasn't designed for this current situation. And so we're now seeing a situation where we suddenly do need a lot more gas, and getting access to that gas at a fair price is tricky. The producers really need to think about what sort of price should we charge for that gas. They will have some flexibility to be able to put gas into the domestic market, and that's what they'll be talking to the government about, is how much gas can we get into the domestic market to provide what is probably still a short-term, but short-term could go on for a few weeks yet, problem to get gas into the electricity market.
Okay, so why are ministers like Chris Bowen and Matt Keane talking about coal as the short-term solution?
Well, it's the coal-fired power stations that are offline at the moment for a range of reasons, flooding of coal mines, explosions, as I said before, and that needs to be fixed because you've got 25% of about 20-odd coal-fired power stations offline. The short-term thing is to get them back online. Get the coal into those power stations where it's not available, get the ones that are offline for maintenance back online as fast as possible. That's obviously not the long-term solution. The long-term solution is to wean ourselves off coal-fired power, but you can't do that overnight, otherwise you'd risk reliability anyway. And so the fact that we are well behind where we could have been if we'd started this journey 10, 15, 20 years ago is real. But you can't go back and fix that now.
No.
You've got to deal with the problem we have today.
Okay, let's go back 10 years because there's a bit of politics in all of this. We know where the climate wars have been. Gas emissions are 50% less than coal. We are at this point now. Is it a problem of the past that the signals in the market were that we're moving to renewables quite quickly, so the gas element and gas producers haven't fired up as much as they need to? And can that happen now, looking at where we're going?
Well, it isn't then just the availability of gas.
Right.
It's have we got enough gas-fired power stations to be able to fill in the gap? And I think the answer is that even that's hard to do at the short notice. So we are now in a situation where we've got to have a combination of renewable energy which grows and fossil fuel which basically dies, but in coordination. And that means that we have to make sure that we get the coal back online, knowing that those coal-fired power stations are going to close. We can deal with the short term in relation to gas. And of course, the other priority, which the Labor government has identified during the election campaign, is we do need to put in place the transmission lines to connect all those renewable energy projects which have been delayed because of the climate wars you spoke about. So we are left with the consequence of a long period of time where we couldn't get agreement on how far and how quickly we're going to go on reducing emissions. We now have to catch up. And we all know catching up quickly almost certainly has its own problems.
It's interesting to see where this argument is going as well. So some are arguing we should never sign up to net zero. So that was bipartisan at one point by 2050. Well, essentially bipartisan, almost a few percentage points in it. So where do we go now? Do you think, Tony? I mean, renewables aren't there yet to replace all of that baseload power from fossil fuels. Does gas play a bigger role for the next decade with these coal-fired power stations looking to close earlier than first thought?
Well, I think what we're going to see, and the net zero target is not threatened by this, certainly for the electricity sector, and we just concentrate on that for the time being. There are other sectors which are maybe more problematic, like agriculture.
Yeah.
But in terms of electricity, the weird thing about a lot of this debate at the moment is that back in 2017, when Malcolm Turnbull was Prime Minister, and he lost his prime ministership over the issue of a policy which was intended to put in place a credible policy for reducing emissions in electricity called the National Energy Guarantee, or NEG. He lost his job over that. Josh Frydenberg was promoted at the end of it. That's the last attempt we had at putting this in place. Now, as we now look at where we have to get to, I don't think net zero by 2050 is a threat. What we do need is a policy framework that provides the incentives for investors to build the renewables and the transmission and storage to support those renewables. And once you are doing that, then you can be turning off the coal with confidence, with all confidence. And secondly, the gas will, I'm sure, play a role because it will be one of those technologies that would fill in when the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining, and we know, and we're going through one of those periods now. In winter, it's colder, the days are shorter, and we do have times when the wind isn't blowing. So we will need gas, I'm sure, for a while as we sort out the last 10%. But basically, we can get there, but we're now having to put in place those policies we should have had in place 9, 10, 15 years ago.
Okay, Tony, thanks so much for explaining that to us this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you.